Have you ever wondered how the mighty Roman Empire maintained its dominance for centuries? Was it solely because of their advancements in various fields, or did they have a dark secret that kept their subjects in line? It may come as a surprise, but fear was the key to their success. The Romans were not afraid to use brutal and violent punishments to instill terror in the hearts of their people. What's even worse, they took pleasure in watching these public executions, turning them into grotesque spectacles. It really makes you wonder, was the Roman Empire built on innovation and progress, or was it built on a foundation of fear and tyranny? Today, we'll explore the streets of ancient Rome to learn about the harsh penalties and public chastisements that were imposed for violating any law. Let's delve into the topic of crucifixions, which predate Christianity and originated in Assyria in the 6th century BC. The practice of crucifixion varied among different cultures, but it was first gained prominence in the Roman Empire during the 4th century BC. After Alexander the Great ordered the crucifixion of over 2,000 people following the siege of Tyre and Phoenicia, crucifixion became a popular form of punishment for Romans to inflict on slaves, rebels, pirates, and enemies, regardless of age or gender. Children were not exempt from crucifixion if they committed a crime against Rome or were the offspring of an offender. The only group that was immune from this brutal punishment were Roman citizens, who were granted a certain level of respect that prohibited them from being subjected to such a degrading fate. However, there were some exemptions for those who seriously harmed Rome, or for soldiers who deserted the battlefield. The Romans did not always whip their condemned prior to the crucifixion, except for those who were particularly despised. However, it was customary for prisoners to carry their own crossbeam to the place of execution, where they were stripped of their clothing and attached to the cross using ropes and long nails that pierced through their bodies and the wood. Now, contrary to popular belief, the ankles and wrists were nailed instead of the hands and feet, as recent research has shown that the latter cannot support the weight of the body. Once upright, death would come within hours or days due to dehydration, infection, asphyxiation, or cardiac arrest, and then the body was left exposed as prey for scavengers, a degrading and merciless demise. The punishment of damnatio ad bestias involved being fed to wild beasts, a rare occurrence in modern times, as one would have to venture into the depths of the forest, sea, desert, or even a zoo to face such danger. However, in ancient Rome, it was a common form of execution and a spectacle for the masses, particularly at the Colosseum and amphitheaters before games and celebrations. This method was reserved for slaves, prisoners of war, enemies of the state, and even early Christians between the 1st and 3rd century AD. It was deemed degrading and held in the early hours of the day to maximize the number of spectators. The convicted man was placed in the center, either tied to a post or left with little protection and a wooden sword for defense. Sometimes they were even forced to play the character of a mythological being, whose destiny was predicted to be dinner. Once the beasts were agitated to make them more dangerous, they were released into the arena, where they tore the condemned to pieces and feasted on their flesh. Rarely did the person manage to defeat the beast. In addition to felines of different types, bears, wolves, and crocodiles were used in executions by damnatio ad bestias. Even the Carthaginian general Hannibal confronted the Romans, captured during the Punic Wars with elephants. Any animal capable of piercing, crushing, or tearing apart a human being would do. Now, the harshest punishment in ancient Rome was the penalty of the sack, which is even worse than the crucifixion or being attacked by beasts. This form of punishment involved being placed in a bag with enraged animals and tossed into the sea. Now, while it may seem less daunting since larger animals couldn't fit in the sack, it was still a dreadful sentence. The penalty of the sack was only reserved for the crime of patricide, where a child killed their parents, which was seen as the most heinous act in Roman society. However, there was no punishment if a parent killed their child, since they had total control over their family's life. The individual committed the offense would endure a severe punishment of beatings and whippings until their entire body was marked. Following this, they would only be dressed in a cap made of wolfskin and wooden shoes, and then they would put into a leather sack. The sack would contain 4 animals that were not only intended to harm the condemned, but also had symbolic significance. Initially, a snake would be added to represent patricide, followed by a rooster, known for its bravery and ability to confront a lion, then a monkey, seen as a mockery of humans, and finally a dog, since it was deemed unclean. These small creatures would be the executions and companions of the condemned on their final journey to the sea. This journey could last a few minutes or hours, during which the desperate animals would bite, scratch, and peck the victim, potentially killing them before reaching the sea. If the condemned survived this journey, the water would undoubtedly drown them and eventually blend all the bodies, making them unrecognizable. Many of us are familiar with the terrifying concept of being buried alive, a result of a rare condition that temporarily shuts off vital signs to an undetectable level, but not enough to cause death. However, for the vestigial versions of an ancient Rome, being buried alive was not just a frightening possibility, but a real and severe punishment for those who violated their sacred vows of chastity. These priestesses were devoted to the goddess of Vesta, the deity of home and fire, and were forbidden from engaging in any sexual activity. If a man dared to touch a Vestal virgin, he would be flogged, since shedding the blood of a priestess was strictly prohibited. Later on, the 5th emperor of Rome, Tarquinius Priscus, introduced a new form of punishment for any Vestal virgin who broke her vows. This sentence involved being locked up in a cramped underground room with minimal supplies, such as a sofa, lamp, and food for only a couple of days. The belief was that if the woman was truly innocent, her goddess would rescue her, but if she was guilty, she would die alone and forgotten from starvation. Though the punishment was not frequently employed, a few cases over the centuries resulted in women who miraculously managed to escape this grisly fate. Decimatio was the penalty for cowardice in the Roman legions. Life as a soldier was arduous, with one constant exposure to danger while fighting for one's country. While trained to obey orders and never retreat, the natural human instinct of fear can sometimes compel soldiers to flee. However, disobeying an order, which was essentially a death sentence, was considered a grave offense by the military. The Roman Empire and its commanders deemed it dishonorable and deserving of severe punishment. If a large number or even the entire legion deserted, a punishment known as decimation was implemented, which meant punishing 1 out of every 10. The cowardly deserters were divided into groups of 10, and one person was chosen to blindly draw a white or black stone from a sack. Choosing a white stone would save their life, while a black one meant being beaten to death by their fellow soldiers. No one was allowed to refuse to carry out the punishment, or they would face the same fate. Survivors of the punishment were forced to sleep outside the safety of their camp, and were only given barley to eat. This cruel and demoralizing punishment left a heavy burden of guilt on all the members of the legion. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the dark side of ancient Rome, where fear and brutality were the tools of oppression. The Romans maintained their dominance through cruel punishments that terrorized their people, and it makes us wonder whether innovation and progress, or fear and tyranny, built the Roman Empire. Have you ever wondered about the methods of ancient punishment and the stories behind them? Let us know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching Historical Records Punishments. Don't forget to subscribe for more fascinating stories and facts about cruel and unusual punishments throughout history. Stay tuned for our next video, and until then.